Good afternoon, good morning or good evening or whatever the time of the day or night it is that you're tuning in to First Report 30.0, and this beside me today is not Fletcher Tabito but it is Mark Patterson, our primary industry spokesperson, among other ththings.
And of course, this is Clayton Mitchell, the Dark Prince of New Zealand First.
The Dark Prince? I don't know if I like that, or maybe I do. Thanks for tuning in this week. Fletcher's away. He's over in Fiji at the moment doing some bilateral talks.
He is, representing us well over there, hopefully.
Pressing the flesh. Rightio, this week we've got a few things that have come to the forefront of everybody's conversation, something that's been working on in the background for many, many months, actually over 5 months. And this is the climate change bill, or the carbon zero bill. So when you hear carbon zero or climate change, it's the same thing. But today there was an announcement from the minister, and there was also a very important announcement and media release by the Right Honourable Winston Peters, because the work that went in behind this, behind the scenes to get this bill to where it actually sits today is absolutely outstanding. And I think you kind of get the balance right with a piece of legislation when you've got both people on both sides of the argument, and I'm not talking politicians, talking farmers and the environmentalists, that actually are both displeased with the outcome, which kind of means you're probably in and around about the middle, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, well, of course, we're faced with having to, the climate commitments that the National Party made in Paris, and
Good point.
We're having to deal with that. So this is the pointy end of that. There's some big decisions need to be made, and today there's some announcements made around that.
So the National Party did sign us up to the Paris Accord in their last term of government, which is it's a commitment by New Zealand to ensure that we can bring our net carbon emissions down to zero by 2050. But there's some pretty big fiscal or monetary taxes that are positioned in that. So it's probably costing us about $1.6 billion a year, which is why it's become a bit of a priority for this government. But a few things, because we're talking to the Federated Farmers today, and they were sort of initially on the left, but I think they're starting to come around. It'd be interesting to see where they go after today's conversation.
Yeah, and the issue for agriculture, of course, is the science isn't quite there yet in terms of being able to offset some of these methane emissions. It is coming down the pipeline, but we are going to have to work really hard to bring that on as quickly as possible. Yeah,
and the great thing is here, I think the entire House has agreed that we need a climate change commission, but we didn't want to give them the autonomy that they were initially saying, powers of the Reserve Bank, so to speak. So we've pulled them back from that. We're going to be setting out the target. So we're going to have a 10% reduction by 2030, and then bringing that up to 24+% by the time we get to 2050, which is a huge change, which will have a net positive effect for running into the future, won't it?
That's right. And there will be a full select committee process and that this will go through, so it'll be hammered out pretty thoroughly over the next few months, and we should get it to where it needs to be.
And I hate to be sounding negative, but the amount of people that I talk to on the street don't actually get all pent up about this sort of stuff. There's a few sectors that do. In fact, I've spoken to people in ministry offices that don't fully understand what all this means and how they're going to do it and how they measure 1 to 1.5% reductions of methane versus the CO2 emissions, etc., etc. So it is quite complex, but the positive thing is we're now on the table. We've actually got a solution to a problem that the National Party caused for us in the last term. But enough of that, mate. Talking about some good news also, some more good news is the number of home buyers from the international markets is in a massive decline. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, that's a core New Zealand First policy, of course, and David Parker led that as well from the Labour side, and we've had an 81% reduction in the foreign buyers in our housing market, which is making it more affordable and easier for Kiwi first home buyers, and that's at a very high level compared to where it's been.
Say that again, mate. 81%.
81%.
That's huge.
Yeah,
I mean, remember last term the national government was talking about how minor the foreign buyers market, how much of a low impact it was having on our market. Yeah. But when you see a huge reduction like that, it's having an impact on New Zealanders being able to afford to buy their own home. And we're starting to see a market that's coming down. I mean, there is some global cooling off inside it. Sydney's a perfect example of how it's cooling off. But New Zealand's also experiencing that. And that's exactly where we need to reset it. Having these sorts of levers that will actually help New Zealanders get into their own homes. How are we looking for time? Well, anything you'd like to update us on, mate?
Well, I was just wondering, in your immigration portfolio, Clayton, there's been some announcements today too that'll be good for the region. So
yeah, look, we've got to have a bit more of a regional approach. We are, as a party, absolutely committed to bring the volume of immigrants coming to New Zealand down. Under national, it was 73,400. We're going to get some clearer numbers on that, but we've heard numbers down as low as 43,000. So that's a significant drop. But we've got to make sure that in doing this, we don't actually leave our vulnerable sectors short of workforce. So the regional announcement today with regards to immigration is making sure that we have got those skilled migrant visas available and identifying some of those areas that are needed, particularly in early childhood education, secondary school education, nursing, aged care workers, but construction. And I know the RSC scheme is a very, very popular scheme. We've got to review the numbers on that to make sure that we've got the workforce coming in. And also hospitality in certain areas around the country still need those skilled migrants coming in to actually fill some of those positions. So it's actually been a pretty good week.
Yeah, so it's a more targeted approach rather than the open floodgates that we had under national.
Dead right, yeah. So on that note, we'll sign off now. We'll be back next week with some more exciting episodes of First Report, which will be 31.0. Great to have you back on the show.
No, great to be back on. My second time, so yeah.
Is it? I thought it was your third.
No, only my second, so
Jeez, I feel terrible.
I'm savouring the opportunity.
Great, thanks for tuning in. Ciao.